a question. I recently heard a discussion claiming that anti-Semitism, the largest group internationally, seems to be the Muslim group of people by very high percent, because it seems that anti-Semitism is taught in the various religious institutions in France, in England, and so on. And the Ayatollahs and imams keep spreading that. Is that true? And if it is, what can be done about that?
Thank you, Dory.
If you don't mind, Rabbi Graber, let's take a few more questions and responses so I can respond.
Will do. Jack Sasson, and then Kay and Judy, and then we'll give Abdullah some time.
Thank you very much, Imam. That was a wonderful talk, and it really gave us a great feeling of togetherness this time around. I grew up in a Muslim country, and I have to say that in my days, this is the 50s, we had anti-Zionism, of course, because of Israel and so forth, but we didn't have anti-Semitism. So as part of the answer you would be giving, I wonder if you can tell us, where do you think this is rooted, and how did it take hold so strongly in some of these communities?
So Abdullah, because these two questions were similar, let me invite you to respond just to that general area of questions, and then we'll take a few more.
Thank you very much. First of all, again, Shabbat Shalom, and all the wonderful expressions of thanks and gratitude. I love it, I cherish it. But there's a beautiful Arabic proverb. It goes, La shukra ala wajib. If somebody is fulfilling their duty, no thanks is necessary. Really, that's exactly how I feel. As I appreciate those acts of gratitude, I am trying to fulfill my ethical, moral imperatives, trying to fulfill my responsibility as good as I can. I hope I am doing a better job. I hope I can do a better job. So I really appreciate it, but I don't feel like, oh my God, I deserve all these outpouring gratitude and thanks. I'm doing my job. And I'm trying to invite and inspire others to do their own job as well. So I can hold both appreciation as well as the moral responsibility at the same time. To these two powerful questions, Dorita, your resources on this particular issue may or may not be true. And the short answer is true. Anti-Semitism is increasing in large numbers in most of the Muslim majority societies and countries, especially after 1948. Don't get me wrong, Islam as a religion, Quran as a scripture, and our foundational canon, our own version of Tanakh, has anti-Semitic elements. And over the centuries, it has produced anti-Semitism. But Baruch Allah, Baruch Hashem, it is the goodness of Jewish-Muslim relations, relative harmonious nature of the Jewish-Muslim relations in Muslim majority countries, contrary to Christian majority countries in Europe, as Jackson alluded in his question. These anti-Semitic literature in our religion, in our theologies, in our scriptures, it never moved to the center the way it is now, the way it is becoming more mainstream until 1948, until the creation of the State of Israel. The state's creation, I grew to understand, I grew to even appreciate how much of this return home for my Jewish brothers and sisters, how much of this 2,000 years of religious fulfillment of a dream that Jews going back to their ancestral homeland and to a place where they have prayed 3 times a day and every Jewish calendar event, etc. So I know and I understand, I appreciate and I applaud. This is no disrespect to this beautiful communal collective joy and delight that you feel often and loyalty and connection that you feel to that part of the world and the state of Israel. But my people, and about 1.7 billion of us, that's why the numbers are greater, our experience of that creation of the state of Israel is different, and it's not positive. We have come to realization of that secular nation state through the lenses and experiences of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. And therefore, for many decades, there was no religious anti-Semitism being taught in schools in UK, in France. It started with a political outrage, a political sense of social justice. But regretfully, like any relationship, once the relationship is toxic, poisonous, deteriorated between two individuals or two communities, all those peripheral anti-Semitic elements that we had, but we learned how to quarantine for centuries because our relationship with our Jewish brethren was better, is now moving to the center. Now it's moving to the center. But I categorically reject that this is the majority of the discourse. It's not that every single Muslim school or Muslim community, and I really appreciate Adam's so wonderful reaction of his golden heart, beautiful heart into this. But it would be missed opportunity. It would be hypocritical and dishonest. Okay, it's not the majority discourse, but the existing minority anti-Semitic discourse, both religious as well as political, is not being challenged. It is not being challenged. That's my problem. I am not interested in going after anti-Semites. I am interested in why the silent majority is sleeping, why the good-meaning people who see these anti-Semitic discourses in their mosques, in their communities, in their Islamic centers, in their Muslim community spaces, and why it is not outrage, creating outrage. Why are we not able to filter out? That's exactly where we need to focus. Because if you look, this deranged terrorist, anti-Semitic terrorist, British citizen who came to Texas, this incident says very, very little about his connection to an organized Muslim Islamic extremist terrorist organization or this or that. Even to other incidents like Pittsburgh and others, if you look at the white supremacists, very few of these people are members of organized, intentional, deliberate terrorist anti-Semitic organization. They are products of, it's a terrorism, it's hate, it's a vile anti-Semitism, but they are products of unchallenged, unrooted, unfiltered anti-Semitic discourse, which is very prevalent, very, very prevalent. If I'm not taking too much of your time, I'll say one final word. Much of this anti-Semitic discourse that goes unchallenged often, it has two components. One, significant part of it, a majority part of it, is out of regretful ignorance. My people do not know what anti-Semitism is often, do not understand what's the difference between criticizing the policies of the state of Israel against Palestinians and what is the language that you can legitimately criticize any government, any policy, or any injustice around the world, and how do you not cross the line into anti-Semitism? How do you not cross the line into hate and racism? Much of
Abdullah, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second to say, I also want to share that I think in the Jewish community, right, this is a real, it's a very difficult question as to how do we do this, right? Because in the Jewish community also, there are criticisms of the state of Israel, and there are legitimate criticisms of the state of Israel. So I want to ask you to sort of double click. I would love to hear you think about this so much. What are those telltale signs where something's gone off of the rails here? I'd love to hear you reflect on that for a minute.
I know, and something has gone off the rail for about a century now. So there is no easy fix to this problem, because part of the problem is not rational. Part of the problem, as hate, is often not rational. The kind of negative, evil, hateful, anti-Semitic connotations that this discourse have built into, like in many Muslim communities, the word Zionism. If you say the Zionism, people shut down right there. They don't even hear anything anymore. We have to go really deep into this problem. And before we educate people, before we have to detoxify, demystify, depoison, unpoison the vocabulary and terminology that we are discussing on this issue. It's very similar to like the word jihad. Good luck saying jihad in an American airport today. Like, who cares what it means and who says what, and it is inner struggle, your ability to become ethical. Like, it's, people don't listen to you anymore because the word has its own connotation and reality in your heart, in your mind, before it gets into your intellect. So the problem is incredibly deep that many Muslims, because of this toxicity and poison, they don't even know as they are talking, as they are discussing this issue, that they are immediately crossing the line into anti-Semitism. And I hope it will come out respectfully. At least in the United States, our inability as Jews and Muslims to create a respectful space where legitimate criticism, disagreement could be processed, or anti-Semitism is very quickly, too quickly, has been called when people are discussing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. When anti-Semitism is weaponized to silence and censor very legitimate human rights concern, that adds additional layers of complication to the problem. It gives a very troubling mask to these anti-Semites that they can hide behind this, because there are so egregious First Amendment violations calling anti-Semitism when it isn't, or equating any criticism of any kind to state of Israel and its policies towards Palestinians so quickly, so irresponsibly as anti-Semitism, then these people can behind and invalidate all calls of anti-Semitism anywhere and everywhere.
So let me ask you a question, and I hope it's okay. I'm going to take a little prerogative here. Abdullah, you've been very, very vocal, especially over the last couple of months, about a particular issue, which is I don't even want to say mainstream, because what I'll say is well-known Muslim organizations, like the Committee on Arab Islamic. You know what I'm talking about. Council on American Islamic Relations and American Muslims for Palestine. Yes. So they made a declaration, or their executive director or somebody gave a speech a while ago, and there was even a paper that came out with it that declared, and you mentioned this a little bit in your talk, that polite Zionists are the enemy. Okay. Yeah, all of you. Right, which essentially takes 95% of the American Jewish community and declares them as the enemy. My question to you is, help us just to focus on that little thing. Why is that anti-Semitic? Because it is related to the state of Israel. Right. And one can have criticisms of the state of Israel. And by the way, before the founding of the state of Israel, there were Jews who were anti-Zionists. And the position of being an anti-Zionist is, it's complicated in terms of, the Haredi communities who are, et cetera. But help us to understand, why are you, and Imam Antepli has literally been a world leader on this. He was interviewed on the BBC and other places speaking about that as anti-Semitism. Help us to tease out, what is the anti-Semitism of saying that it is a vile anti-Semitism. In that particular report that American Muslims for Palestine put together, I hope you will share the relevant links to everyone here in the audience. They basically put together a report declaring 95%, maybe more, American Jews as our enemies, non-kosher. We shouldn't be talking to them. We shouldn't even be shaking their hands, and we shouldn't be engaging with them. And there is a context. I've been dealing with this issue, as you know, in reaction to the program that I have established at Shalom Hartman Institute for more than a decade now, and even more. It is an egregious and unacceptable display of anti-Semitism. And while in their annual convention, just to bring everybody on the same page, this American Muslims for Palestine organization, not only they proudly, adding insult to the injury,
displaying this vile anti-Semitic report, they allowed some of the others like them, like Zahra Bilu, who was the executive director of the CARE Bay Area, one of the most well-known Muslim figure and face in that, even nationally, but especially in the Bay Area. She just gave a voice to what that report says. Look, I don't want anybody to teach me my religion. I know my religion. I spend my life in my religion. I don't need others and outsiders to tell me what is Islamophobic and what is not. I know what hurts me and my people. So since I don't want these people to tell me what is anti-Muslim hate, what is Islamophobia, and what is criticizing maybe extremism and jihadism and Islamism, the moral decency requires me to not define Judaism, Zionism, anti-Semitism for the Jewish people, and be humble enough and morally decent enough to learn and try to see the world through their eyes with no obligation to agree with them. It is anti-Semitic because I know enough. I did my homework. I study it with God-fearing, God-loving, ethical, moral Jews, people like yourself, Rabbi Graber, and Rabbi Solomon, and Rabbi Dinner, and others, and people in Hartman Institute, that this categoric declaration of Zionism as racism, with no breakdown, with no nuances, with no acknowledgement that Zionism, both in secular ideological nationalistic term as well as in religious term, has a million different definitions. It's a different experience for Jews all around the world. And very rarely it's just equally racism or post-colonial ideology to displace people for joy. Like, it's unbelievable how what hate does is it takes these complicated, multi-layered issues and realities, and it essentializes it into one thing: evil. If this is not hate, I don't know what it is. I am saying anti-Semitic, not because that's my conclusion, because I know how much it hurts my Jewish brothers and sisters, because I see how it lands to Jewish eyes and ears, because it ultimately is exactly what we are doing to Jewish brothers and sisters, what's being done to us. I am activating universal and Islamic golden rule, that I see that we are treating people the way we don't want to be treated. And this is not acceptable. I invite my people, as you have seen me saying publicly and privately, their moral homework to really understand Zionism, understand, not agree with Zionism in its reality, in its diversity, in its complexity, in its multi-layered experiences and meaning, and the state of, it's similarly like the same thing. When I look at some of the Islamophobic people or anti-Muslim Jews, their moral homework to understand, how do I experience and see Palestinian suffering? How do I see, how does it resonate to me? I think these people's moral homework to do this, and I want them to do this homework, but in order to remain on any moral ground, to invite people understand things the way I understand, reject and oppose it in its reality. Don't turn into a lie. Don't turn into a myth. That's what hate does. They take a partial truth. That's what Protocols of Elders of Zion is. They take these mini truths. That's what Nazism was. Very rarely, hate and propaganda is just absolutely outrageously a lie. They take a partial truth and then turn into a toxic, poisonous, destructive ideology, which has been going on around the world, especially in the Muslim community, for a long time. The last thing I will say, Daniel, is the sad thing is often this is done in the name of pro-Palestinian activism. These people, not only they are vile, racist, anti-Semitic, horrible, but they are also desecrating the suffering people's legacy. They are adding insult to their injury, because this anti-Semitism does nothing to Palestinians. It doesn't improve any Palestinian lives. It doesn't bring Israeli-Palestinian conflict an inch towards peace and reconciliation. They are part of the problem, and they should be rooted out.
I'm just going to respond just briefly, and then we'll take a couple more questions. I think, our friend and teacher Yossi Klein Halevi speaks about how anti-Semitism, one of the ways that you can sort of really test for it is this demonizing, right? Where, and as you said, you take a partial truth and you make it everybody, you sort of turn, and the question is, you know, I think the solution is, can we get to know each other and can we hear each other's stories? But the danger is when we turn all Muslims into, you know, X, Y, and Z, and that's Islamophobia. And when all Jews, because by the way, a challenging piece is that, and here, you know, I will say, Jews love to tell stories of Jewish pride. Okay, we love to talk about how many Nobel Prize winners we have. We take great pride in how many Jews are in the Biden administration and the government.
How many Jews in Hollywood?
And how many Jews there are in Hollywood, and how many Jews there are in banking. And we love to tell some of those stories ourselves. And we shouldn't be ashamed of achieving, you know, a success, etc. But the moment that morphs into, as it did with the hostage taker, Jews are all powerful. And all I need to do is get any synagogue anywhere, and they'll be able to activate superhuman responses in order to get this person out of prison. You've now turned Jews into a myth, right? Into a conspiracy theory, into something which is monstrous. And I think that's, and the same thing can happen with Israel when there's only Israel is at fault, and by the way, becomes responsible for, you know, for things thousands of miles away, right? That Israel somehow invented,
Thousands
you know,
of years ago.
right? And you know, so it can happen with Israel, can happen with the Jewish people. Okay,
I have to respond. I'm sorry. I really want to hear and I have all the time in the world. One last thing, why this incident, this AMP report and CARE blunder is anti-Semite. I know these people. They are bad faith actors. There is no any other way of telling this. Look, the same people are advocating for this convicted terrorist, Dr. Afia woman. They are presenting her as wrongly convicted, and they are advocating for her release, etc. I'm not getting to, I don't know enough to know that if this person is wrongly convicted. One of the ways in which you understand if it is anti-Semitic, if they're obsessed and singling out Jews, Zionism, and Israel on any issue. The same people who are advocating for the release of this convicted terrorist that this gunman in Texas was demanding, they are nowhere to be seen. There are thousands of African-American Muslims here in America wrongly convicted behind the bars. There is a very high profile release, the Adnan Saeed case, where my colleague and friend Rabbi Chaudhry has been working for 2 decades. He is wrongly convicted for life. There are so many cases. Why is this a priority for these people? Why this vile anti-Semitic person who is a convicted terrorist, their release is a high profile and priority for these people? So we have to know these people, and I know them, and they are bad faith actors, regretfully. I hope communities' overall health and the Jewish-Muslim relations overall health will root these people out.
All right, Abdullah, I'm gonna move us through some questions. So I want to hear Susanna and Abigail and Adam and Faye. Go ahead.
I think Rowan had her hand up before me.
Oh, all right. Rowan, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say that I had no idea what happened until you told us about it. So I'm glad for you letting me know what's going on, and I can't say what I really think because what I want to say about it is inappropriate because it's a potty word.
All right. Thank you.
But,
and I'm glad that you're
that you really believe in what you what you do, and that there's actually not a lot of people in the world who really believe in what they do for a good cause. And I like that I can meet someone who's like that, and I want to be like that when I grow up too.
Thank you, Rowan. Thank you.
Will be
Susanna,
better.
go ahead.
I do kind of want to stick around, but my dog needs to go out.
And
Okay.
Rowan,
We're going to hear from some other people. So Susanna, go ahead.
As a Talmud Torah teacher, even if I'm not right now. I think that you're just hearing about this, you're having emotions that make you want to say potty words, like that's healthy. Go on a walk with your dog. That sounds like a great idea. And thank you for sharing. I wanted to say just like first, good to see you. And my question might be a naive one. I just have not heard this river to sea term before. And I think that's what you said in your discussion, Aman. And I would just want
You've never heard
to
of
see
it?
if you could help
I'm
explain it.
curious.
Abdullah, do you want to do that or you want me to?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So from the river to the sea is a chant that is sometimes present in pro-Palestinian marches. The reason why and correct me if I'm wrong, Abdullah, that he referred to it as genocidal is from the river to the sea implies that it's the Jordanian River through the sea, which is the Mediterranean Sea. And it essentially says that in being pro-Palestinian, we view all of the land, including, inside the Green Line, as needing to be, as there's no place for a Jewish state, right? And sometimes that even implies that
more that they need the Jews.
It is not the state. It says no Jews who came after 1917 Balfour Declaration. No Jews that came after 1948. It will be completely wiped out. We will throw them onto the sea, from river to the sea, meaning all Jews. They will undo 1948. This is the chant.
Abigail, go ahead, and if you can turn your camera on, that's great. But if not, we'll listen to your voice.
I can turn it on. The camera is up on my couch and my Shabbat lunch is on the carpet in front of me. So that's where you're finding me. I take to heart what you're saying, Imam Antepli, about thanks feeling kind of like missing the point. So I guess where I can put the gratitude to instead is to God for the friendship that you both have together and what you're pulling off together and for who you both are. And in one way, my question is really about that, but it's also another version of the question that everyone's already been asking, because the biggest gift that this conversation is to me and to listening to you both, and maybe specifically to you, Imam Antepli, is I didn't know that I needed to hear anger about this. I had felt sadness about what had happened. I had felt despair about what happened, but I didn't need, but listening to your talk during our service to me was almost like hearing God get angry about what had happened. And I didn't know I needed to hear that. And I think, and listening to what you both are explaining about where this anti-Semitism is coming from, I think part of it, and specifically what you're saying about how poisonous the conversation is I become afraid of being angry because I don't know where my anger will go. It seems as if there are only bad options for getting angry. And listening to you both now, it seems to me that that's actually not sufficient and that I'm missing something important. So that's my question basically, is how do you get angry safely and like in a necessary, holy way? That's my question.
And I will.
Thank you. I have to respond. It's so beautifully put. Anger is a value. Anger is a virtue. God gave us anger for a reason. But like all emotions, like all virtues, it needs to be tamed, like fear, like love. If my anger was making me hate my community, if my anger was making me hate Islam, if my anger was pushing me to the crippling hands of despair and hopelessness, then this is a toxic anger. I am hoping it's the opposite. I love Islam. I love Muslim community. My anger is not only this is vile, immoral, evil, but also this will destroy my Islam. This will destroy my community. American Islam will be shaped and destroyed because the hate within it is not challenged enough, rooted out enough. If anything I learned from Islam, from Quran, from Muhammad, hate destroys the bearer first before it becomes a problem to the subject of that hate. So my anger is embedded in my loyalty to Islam, my Muslim community. If your anger towards the moral failures of your community is kicking you out of the community, then you should check your anger. You should absolutely. But in the face of this evil, what happened last week? Anger, a constructive anger, anger that is tamed and nurtured by biblical Quranic teachings is the most appropriate response. And thank you for naming it. I am angry. And I hope my anger didn't make me say or do things that's inappropriate. But that's the legitimate response. Anger is a beautiful thing. If you are not angry, that means you don't care. That means you really don't see, you really don't understand. You are so poisoned by apathy. Your will is numb, that you need to just clean your heart and look if you are not angry enough. I invite myself to join me in my anger. That channels this anger into constructive action. That's what I'm trying to do. But thank you, Abigail.
And I will say that the rabbi agrees wholeheartedly with the imam's religious teaching. I'll add, in the Psalms that we say on Friday night, Ohavei Adonai sinu ra, that those who love God hate evil. And I think that, as he said, it does need to be tamed. But what I would point out is that in that verse, it says, doesn't hate people, but hates evil. And I think that cultivating that, how do I continue to see every person as containing the potential and the possibility of change, while also being able to hate evil at the same time, I think is the spiritual challenge. There are a few hands that have come up, and I am going to hear from you all, I promise. But there was a question put in the chat, and there's a little bit of a discussion. I don't want to go into the discussion, but Imam, there's a question put into the chat that I would like to just hear you unpack, and I'll read it for you.
I read it.
Ambar wrote, she said, is it fair to say that Zionism is a modern form of colonial oppression, slavery of indigenous Arabs, Palestinians? And what breaks Jews' hearts is that at least one part of Zionism, as it was initially, sorry, I'm having trouble holding the whole question on the page, as it was initially, let's see if I can do this. Sorry, it's like hard. Let me make it bigger and see if that helps me to keep it all on the page.
You are hitting that age, right?
Yeah, something like that. Hold on, let's see.
Not where it needs to be.
It's not that I can't see it, it's that it scrolls away. Hold on, I'm almost there. Yeah, okay. And what breaks Jews' hearts is that at least one part of Zionism, as it was initially envisioned, was to be a form of liberation for Jews and not oppression of Arabs. So will you talk a little bit about that critique that comes from within Judaism, and also obviously, in pro-Palestinian circles as well, that views Zionism as a form of colonialism, oppression, slavery of indigenous Arabs, i.e. Palestinians? I'd like to just—
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. A caution to myself and everybody here. I don't want to get into intra-Jewish debate as a Muslim. And I find myself often in this situation. I don't know why and how. And I don't want to come across as arrogantly teaching people their own religion, teaching Jews, Judaism, and Zionism. So with all these initial remarks, I would love to have a coffee and meal with Tamara. And the short answer is part of Zionism, effectively, is not colonialism, is not displacing people, is some manifestation of Zionism, political Zionism, is yes. To say no to this would be dishonest. I met people whose Zionism make them as really horrible people. They show me their Bible. Some of them were religious in the illegal settlements in the West Bank. And they said, this is given to us and everybody has to get to F off. It's been said to my face directly, or some on the political and the secular front. there are people who take this religious and national identity to a form of racism, but it happens, and I also knew this because my Turkish nationalism, the Turkish nationalism home that I grew up in, I saw what forms of extreme nationalisms can do to people, chauvinism can do to people. I don't single this out to Zionism. I see this, I know us the Kurds and Armenians and Greeks, they will tell you what some form of Turkish nationalism has done to them. I am not denying that extreme nationalism of any kind can turn people into monsters, and they can become with the force of death and destruction, displacement, colonialism onto others. This is, to me, a basic social science. But because there are people, these bad faith actors and some manifestations of evil, with the entire category of Zionism, both religious Zionism as well as secular political Zionism, is just evil. That's the question that we need to ask. And are you consistent in your ethical moral reaction when you see this went rogue aspects of Zionism? Is your reaction similar when it comes to Arab nationalism or Turkish nationalism or American chauvinism and extreme patriotism? Are you morally consistent? Do you outrage in the same way? Do you react? Or only when it comes to this issue, you take this rotten component and generalize that? I'm not saying this to Tamara, but I would love to hear from you. Like, why do you feel this troubling component of Zionism, which is very marginal and minority, in your view, could be, or potentially, or if you feel that way, could be generalized the incredibly complex, diverse spectrum of Zionisms that Jews experience all around the world? I'm not Zionist. I am not Jewish. So I don't want to teach you who you are or your experiences. But let me tell you, Tamara, how these statements coming out of Jewish mouth, Jewish keyboards, is so painful to me to hear. I'm saying you are right. There is an aspect of this problem which is horrible, racist, anti-Arab racist, anti-Palestinian racist. Often when you say this as a Jew, though, it sort of validates the kind of already existing toxic anti-Semitic discourse without maybe you realizing in my community. It pulls the often rug under my feet. I'm not saying this to Tamara directly, but I'm talking about the sentiment. Maybe often, and not maybe, I know often this kind of self-criticism is coming from a moral commitment. And I invite you to do that maybe a little bit more thoughtfully and see what are the impact, how is it landing, what kind of realities it generates in communities who are sufficiently anti-Semitic, who are sufficiently collectively dehumanize the entire Zionism and essentialize it as a evil, as a flesh and blood Lucifer, as Haman in their own mind. Who is it helping? Is it changing the discourse? Is it putting any nuances into the conversation? I tell you, in my experience, it doesn't. That's why I would love to know where you're coming from.
So we have as all things are in the Middle East are resolved, they're resolved over coffee. So we have an offer for coffee. I'll also just add, and then I want to hear from Adam from Adam and Faye and Judy. But you know, our teacher Yossi Klein Halevi, you know, speaks about the element of Zionism, which is also about the Jewish story of returning home. And so, you know, in other words, the indigenousness of the importance of recognizing the way in which the Jewish story involves the land of Israel, and how Zionism that there is a Jewish sense of home in the land, in the same way, or I don't want to say the same way, but in a legitimate way, as indigenous Palestinians as well. Adam, go ahead, and then we'll hear Faye and Judy, and then, as generous as you are, Abdullah, I'm going to bring our time. I'm going to start to bring it to a close because you know, we all need a little bit. Right, no scotch for you. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for being here. It really means an awful lot. I wanted to ask you about like what your perceptions are about the local climate on all of this here in your own community, in the Duke community. I know there have been a number of sort of interesting things in past months. There has been all the brouhaha at Duke about the undergraduate, whatever it was. And there was also the rather, I thought, very interesting and thoughtful statement that Councilwoman Nida Alam wrote in the Indy. So I'm curious to know sort of, I don't know, what you perceive locally at how people can forge connections locally.
Thank you very much. Wonderful question. And it gives me a chance to not contradict myself, but invite us to these paradoxical complexities of life. You know, as angry, as furious as I am, we should take this very seriously. We should not underestimate anti-Semitism and hate and what it could do to the haters and the hated communities. But as I was saying about anger, we should not overestimate either. We should not exaggerate, and we should wisely respond to this. Locally, the national, all the things that we are discussing, increased anti-Semitism is creeping into here. Triangle area to Duke campus, to UNC campus, there are elements. These evil virus is everywhere. But Baruch Hashem, Baruch Allah, it's not going unchallenged. It's not going unopposed. It's not going, I don't know how to say this respectfully. Sometimes for communities who have suffered for a very long time, their reaction to hate is so primal, they go back to their defense, and they sometimes don't see the fuller side of the glass, and they exaggerate, and therefore they alienate even the most closest allies and the low-hanging fruits. I see some of that as well. When I see reactions like Duke University is an anti-Semitic institution, or Triangle area rabbis are just Arafat lovers, they do nothing, they are just sleeping, and there is no reaction from the Jewish community, Jewish leadership, or the leadership of others. These are irresponsible, inaccurate, and potentially very dangerous statements. They are not true. Yes, the whole pool is poison. There is no such thing when it comes to hate. Oh, I'm only peeing to my corner of the pool. The whole pool is being, it's a very weird Turkish expression. Like the whole pool is affected by this. To say no, and there are manifestations of this on Duke campus and the Triangle area, but it's required opposition and moral outrage and moral panic. I guarantee you, it needs to more. It is all pluses and minuses. If the evil people who are trying to divide us, if anti-Semitic people are working 12 hours, 14 hours a day, and if we are working only 6 hours a day, it's no rocket science who will win. Always who are putting their money where their mouth is, who always people, not who's moral, who's right, who's wrong, always what wins in life, who puts the required effort. Sleeping rabbits always lost the race to walking turtles. It doesn't matter that one is faster, one is slower. We need to do more, and we will do more, and we will fight more. At least in the Triangle area at UNC campus, things are not as bad as some other campuses. Bridges are not as burned as some other parts of the country. So you just mentioned Nida Alam, an incredible apology. I hope Rabbi Graber, somebody from your team will share the link. And that apology didn't come in a vacuum, because there was some efforts behind the closed doors, honestly putting an honest mirror before Nida Alam, who I know and I love. I disagree on so many things, but she's an ethical person. When she was made aware that some of her statements were anti-Semitic, when she was made aware that because of some of her statements, there was fear in the hearts and minds of Jewish children, she couldn't sleep that night. That's why she wrote a beautiful apology. I wish you could have said more. I wish you could have been a lot more clearer and louder, but you can only expect so much from the politicians. I'm glad it's refreshing, as Rabbi Graber said in that piece, that see a politician say, sorry, I was wrong. I apologize. This was unacceptable. I am better than this. I will do better than this. So what gives, I hope I'm not sugarcoating or exaggerating the fuller side of the glass locally here. but it doesn't take us off the hook of moral responsibility that I am repeating here. Because we are relatively in a healthier situation, it is incumbent morally upon us. It is imperative on us to work harder so we can model and exemplify and display a different reality than Bay Area, than some campuses in New York City, etc. Okay, I said enough.
Thank you. Faye, go ahead.
You are muted.
I have unmuted myself. Imam Antepli, I admire you. You and I are brothers under the skin, I think, and sisters, brothers and sisters under the skin. I am from Morocco originally, and shukran to you. And I want to tell you that all that you said today, every word of it, I agree with. Number one. Number two, I would like to say that Abigail's talk earlier was such a great segue for what I want to say. What I would like to say is that, yes, indeed, controlled, clever, intelligent anger is necessary. I totally agree with you. I would like you to get my rabbi here and all the rabbis in North Carolina to start some kind of a group where they can educate people on a little bit of anger, your kind of anger, the wonderful anger of being very political, but also très intelligent, very intelligent. You understand a little French, I'm sure, because no, you don't. It didn't go. The French didn't go to Turkey. I realized that. But anyway, I want to say that Jews and we are brothers and sisters, really, because we both our religions believe in the one God who has no shape, no form. We don't know where he is or what he is or anything. We both believe in that. That makes us clever enough to understand that this universe cannot have one leader, one person. That's one good start. The other start is you have the Quran and we have the Torah, and both, of course, were written at times where there were angry people who wrote things, but there were also very clever people that have led us to the way we see things today, now. And the other big things that I want, I'm not being very, I haven't eaten breakfast.
You're wonderful. Look, oh my God, you need some Moroccan breakfast.
Yeah, I'll have to make some couscous. I promise you that many years ago. You don't remember, but
I remember. No, I remember good promises. I'm still waiting for that check to be cashed.
I have to get you and Rabbi Graber, and we have to observe all the rules of allergies. Not so much kashrut, and I know the.
Faye, I'm going to move you forward. Go ahead. Your last
Yes.
point that you were thinking of. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say it's not so much a question. It is a comment that I want to say that because we know we have the Torah and the Quran and all these things to lead us, we should choose the best part, and we should create more people that will get gently angry. We cannot live for the past. My people in the Inquisition suffered. The people in the Holocaust suffered. People before us, all people suffered. The world is like that. The universe goes around like that. It is time for us to get a little gentle anger, clever anger, and like yours. And please keep passing the message on. Thank you. Shukran.
Dimru, amen. I hear your invitation for a holy anger.
Yes,
Amen.
indeed.
Constructive anger, therapeutic anger. Yes, and we will march, inshallah.
So Judy and then Michaela, I see you with your hand up, and then we're going to wrap up our time because
My good friend Michael, hey, Shabbat Shalom.
the rabbi needs the Shabbat nap, Abdullah. Okay, this is very holy. Okay.
Go, I'll take over.
You are not the only one that need the Shabbat nap, by the way.
Judy, go ahead first. Go ahead first.
Yes, first of all, I just want to say how much I appreciated your talk and the humaneness that it represented. And Adam partially asked my question, and that was about the local scene. But I was wondering about your thoughts specifically about the situation around the Students for the Support of Israel, what happened in that incident, and also specifically about the course and the selection of the instructor about the Arab-Palestinian situation on the UNC campus. If you could just address that a bit.
Sure, sure.
And
I
Michaela, let's hear your question too. Go ahead.
Okay.
So first of all, I'm so glad to see you, and yes, we have not seen each other for a while, and I am so appreciative of what you said, but it's not a question, it's a comment. As you know, I'm a product of Islamic studies and Arabic, and I read the Quran, and I know the Islamic history. It was very, very different. Muhammad was a friend to the Jews, and he promoted tolerance and life together. We are much, much far away from those days, and you, my friend,
On the point of the sword, I don't know what
yes,
you're
you, my friend, Sadiq El-Aziz, you are an exception to the rule in the Islamic world. Most Muslims stay, even though they feel like you, they think like you, but most of them stay quiet, and they don't express their views. And even in the most horrific cases that happened throughout the last years, they did not express their views. So I just want to duplicate you, and but this is really very difficult because I'm not extreme person at all, but I know both sides.
Thank you, Michaela. All right, Abdullah, a question about the local campus and UNC, and indeed you are the exception. And then
I cannot imagine. If I'm the best at exception, and that means we are in trouble. I really hope there are better ones out there, good looking ones, lighter ones, more articulate ones. English is my fourth language. I hope there are much better ones out there. I know there are. They just need to be encouraged. They need to be infused some moral courage. In Arabic and Turkish, we have a saying. In Hebrew also they have it. Sometimes courage comes from being not too smart. You have to be a little bit crazy to be courageous. Maybe we should infect people some craziness, some holy craziness, so that they will be a lot more courageous. Judith, I wrote my email here. I hope you will send me an email discussing specific incidents like the PhD student at UNC and the course that she's teaching and who she is, or discussing students supporting Israel, their club situation, which is under investigation at Duke, will require, I am not dodging the question, will require discussing certain individuals, certain people, which may not be the wise thing to, after the wonderful conversation. I'm glad you asked, and I hope you will ask. Going into detail, talking about people who are not here, who doesn't have a chance to maybe respond and clarify, may not be in spirit of what I'm trying to do here. So let's park. I'll be at Bethel next week, and hopefully we can do this schmoozing again and sit down and talk. But let me at least briefly say, it is not as bad as what people make of it, but it is not as innocent as what people are defending make of it. So there is so much complexity goes into this, and it's, to me, not right or wrong. I want to see some Jewish confidence that if a PhD student, a woman, teaches a course for 10 students at UNC, the world doesn't come to an end. Even if everything that we fear of that course is problematic, just have faith in 5,000 years of Jewish survival, that the world doesn't, thankfully, both UNC and at Duke, there are hundreds of other courses that I teach and others teach, Baruch Allah, can inform these students. And these are not, Duke students and UNC students are not, you are not implying this, but I'm saying this, they are not just dumb, idiot kids who can be easily brainwashed by one course or two courses. Like we should exhibit some confidence that even the views that we oppose sometimes could be said. I think our respect to people, I'm not contradict myself. As long as we don't have a hardcore evidence that people cross the line into anti-Semitism and racism and a call for violence. And I assure you, in my own personal judgment, that's not the case. And there are troubling political disagreements. There is very biased, one-sided, distorted information is being released in these circles. But at the end of the day, our commitment to the sanctity of the freedom of speech, our commitment to the academic freedom, allowing these universities to be a place where certain experiments can be done, our threshold for picking the biggest guns and silencing people should be much, much higher than I see. This is only what I'm saying in general. And I shared these in detail with Rabbi Graber and other rabbis who penned a letter in response to that PhD student. The issue at Duke is a lot more complicated. And when the investigation is done, I will be freer to discuss some of my outrage to a number of people, administrators, students who are involved, etc. So let's not jump the guns. I hope I'm not contradicting myself. There is a face of Amalek and Haman staring at us from Colleyville, Texas. I'm not minimizing this. But if we ring the bell and cry wolf, and in every incident we see the face of Haman, we are not doing this, but your question sort of reminded me. We will do this service to the issue that we are trying to solve. That's all I will say. I'll see you next week. My friend,
Next week too.
And I'll say, Abdullah, just by way of conclusion or building on that last point, I think that Zionism was never merely about the land. In many different ways, it was about transforming the Jewish character and giving us the gift of strength and giving us the gift of confidence that comes along with sovereignty. And there are ironies that in places where Jews, such as in Israel and in America, experience such strength and such freedom and celebrate Zionism, we actually continue to maintain some of that, what the Zionists would have called the diaspora mentality. And so, in some ways, what you described is this gift, a potential gift of Zionism itself. Imam Antepli, we would like to duplicate you. We will look forward to greeting you. Everybody will.
My good friend Michal as well, that there are people, as you beautifully said, there are people, but they are silent. You just have to poke them and needle them and wake them up from their troubling slumber and sleep on all sides, inshallah. Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
God bless.
Rabbi Graber.